Okay, so we save, and then the function that we need to run is main your invoices, right? The orchestrator. And let's see the spreadsheet. And voila, you can see here that it created the sheet. You can see, right? Created the invoices sheet. And then here we have the invoices, right? So short and sweet how you can connect Jower to a Google Sheet using the API. So I have this flowchart here to explain you what we're going to do today. But basically this API is simple and straightforward, so it's not complicated. However, there are some things that we need to keep in mind. So I will explain that during the video. So the first thing is that, as always, we will set up a config, and in this config we will have the variables. Then we will have a function. We will have 4 functions, right? So the first function will be the main, and this main will take care of fetching, will take care of the authentication, fetching, and then writing to a spreadsheet, right? So it's gonna be like a orchestrator. Then we will have these 3 functions that will do the heavy lifting, right? So the first one will be the authentication itself. So this API will give us a refresh token, and with that refresh token, we can get an access token, right? So the idea here is that if you're not familiar how these refresh tokens work, well, a refresh token is a long and doesn't expire, so you can use this refresh token to get an access token, and these access tokens expire like around 5 minutes or sometimes 1 day, right? So that's the logic of the refresh tokens, right? So you use it to get these access tokens and then make calls to API. So this function here, get access token via refresh drawer, will take care of that. Then we have this fetching, and this fetching pretty much is just, making the call to API and fetching things. In this case, I will fetch invoices. This is just a demo to explain how to do the connection. But in this case, this example, I will just fetch invoices and data for those invoices. And then once we have this data, we will write that to a spreadsheet. So to give you a walkthrough of my Jower, how it looks like. So here we are in Jower, and basically what I will pull to a spreadsheet is this data here, right? So I created 2 invoices just for this demo. You can see one for client 1 and the other one for client 2. And I'm just, one for $10 and the other one is for 20. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna connect to the API and pull this data to a spreadsheet. But following this logic, you can pull more data and more things. So let's do it. So I'm going to create a brand new spreadsheet so you can see how I'm doing everything from scratch. So here we are in the spreadsheet. Let me make this bigger so you can see. And here we go to extensions, app script. You can give it a name to a spreadsheet and to a project. I'm gonna leave it empty. Okay, so once we are here in app script, I'm going to set up config, right? As I explained here. This is the first part that we need, the variables. So this is the config. And you can see here we have a couple of things that are important. So the first part is the token URL. So this one is for this function that I mentioned that we will use to get our access token using the refresh token. Then this is the endpoint that we need to make calls to API itself to get data. In this case, for this example, I'm gonna get the invoices. So here, this is the GraphQL version, and this is pretty much to make it simple for you guys. If the API gets updated, you can just change this to the most updated part, most updated API, and it's gonna work. And then these are the 3 variables that we need to do some things in Jower, right? So how to get this client ID and client secret? So first, we need to think of 2 things. So we have Jower, which is the website that you use to create all the invoices and all the stuff. But also there's another website that is Jower Developers. So in this Jower Developers, you also need to create an account and you need to do all the process, similar to what you did when you created an account in Jower. So it's 2 different things, right? So I will put everything in the description of the links, but the link itself is developer.getjower.com, sign up. So here you will create an account as a developer. I think you can see, right? So you can just give it a name. It's just for testing, so I'll just create something. Right, so this might for this test, and then you can create a password. Be test 3, test 1, 2, 3. Hi, developer, are you? You can choose whatever, and then sign up, right? Well, actually, I need more things here. So let me just make this twice. Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3, right? So once you have this is important. You need to get, you need to verify. So yeah, you are able to do this. So let's do that. So this is the code that I received. Continue. Okay, once you are here, you can see that now we can create apps, and that's what we need, right? So we need to create an app, and then with this app, we can get the client ID and the client secret. So once we are here in developers and you already created an account, you create an app, right? So you just give it a name. Let me make this bigger. So you just test app. And then the callback URL. This part is important, right? So you need to put something that is live, like a website. You can put your own website. Usually I use my websites. So it's this, like that. And then, but if you don't have a website, you can use NameGrok. The ones that like, I'm not sure how this works. Pretty much gives you like, you can connect localhost, but also you need to make it live, right? So you can use this. You can research it and check how it works in case you don't have a website or a domain. Usually whatever domain works. And then once you have these, you need to get a description to the app. So this is just a test. And then you can actually, you don't need to get a logo. This is just for if you want to publish the app, right? Like if you want to make it like public. But if it's just private for you to get data, you can skip all these steps. And then this scope service is also important, right? So what do you want to get, right? In this case, I want to get the data for invoices. So for the ones who are not familiar how this usually works, scopes, you select read when you only want to read data, right? If you want to write data, meaning that you want to write to Jobber, maybe you are getting data from somewhere, a Google Sheet or whatever, and then you want to send that data to Jobber, that means you are writing data. In that case, you select write, but in this case, I'm just reading data, so read, right? And then here, this part is super important. So you need to toggle this off. Why? Because as you can see here, it means token rotation. So if you don't have this off, like every time that you make a call to API, it will give you a new refresh token, but you don't want that, right? You want to get only one refresh token that is going to be long lasting, right? It won't expire. And with that access token, you can make calls to get an access token, right? So you don't want to be doing this every time. So just toggle this off and that's it, right? So, and then you just save the app. The name doesn't work. Let's see this name. Okay, now it's safe. So you need to toggle this off, right? And then this is the client ID and client secret that I was mentioning that we need, right? So you copy this client ID, and you go to the code and you paste it here, client ID, and then you do the same for client secret. Okay, so we have now the client secret, right? So the last part that we need is how to get this refresh token. So back to this apps page, we need to connect this app to Jobber itself. As I mentioned, there are two different websites here, right? So we have the one where we do everything, right? Like we have the invoices, clients, everything, and then we have this one which is developer. So we need to connect both. In this case, to do it, you need to create a token and then you need to create a link, a URL, and then give access to it. So you could go to the documentation, and do it yourself manually. But to make it simpler for you guys, I create a function that is going to do it for you. You just need to fill two things. So this is the function. I will put it also in the code that you can download from free. So you don't need to do this, but basically the only thing that you need to change here is the client ID and the redirected URL, right? So you need to use the same redirected URL that you put when you create the app, right? So let's do that, right? So you copy client ID that we just got, and then we need the redirected URI. So as I mentioned, it's pretty much my website. So I put it here. Okay, so this is the function that we need, right, to make the connection. And once we do the connection, it's gonna give us a code that we can use to get this refresh token. We also need another function to get the refresh token. I also created for you guys, so you don't need to do it manually. So let's run this first. We get the token, we authorize the app, and then from there I will paste the new function, and so you can see, right? So let's run that. We save and we run it, and it wanna give us this URL, right? And you just paste in a new tab, and this is what will appear. So here you will just see that pretty much telling you that you are connecting to this app, and show you the scopes that you selected, and then you just click in allow access, and that's it. It's gonna take you to the website, right? Okay, so it redirected me to the URI that I put there in the function. So if we were to see the URL itself, you can see that there is a code here, right? So we need that so we can make to make a call and get the refresh token. So before I do that, let me show you the function that we will use for that. So you can delete this function now, you don't need it, but I will put it in the description again, as I mentioned, so you can use it, right? So this is the one that we need to get the refresh token. So in this one, you also need to change some things. So client ID, we just got it here. So let's use that. In this case, we need the secret as well. And then we need the URI, my website. And this is the authentication code that I mentioned that we got from the website, right? So we take it like this. It's gonna be this long thing until state, okay? So the whole thing. So you copy that part, and then you paste it here, and that's it, right? So let's run it, and we should get the refresh token. Okay, so we save, and then we test it. First time that you run it, it's gonna ask you for access. So you grant access like that. Continue, and voila, this is the refresh token. So with this token, we can reuse it and always get access tokens, right? So this will make everything so simple to make also API. So you copy this API, this token, and you put it here in refresh token. Then you can delete this, right? We don't need it anymore. And that's it, guys. For that, we have these three things that are the most important part here. And then these two more things here. Sheet. This is pretty much the name of the sheet that I wanted to be. You can change this in case you are this is variable, right? You can put whatever you want here. And this paging, this is just for the API, for pagination. For the ones who are not familiar, what pagination is pretty much is the way APIs work is that doesn't give you all the data at once, right? It's not like you make a call and gives you like everything. No, you can think of it like a book, right? So it's gonna show you the first page, and then in that page, you can do things, right? You can get the items, whatever, and then if you have more data, you require the second page and the third page until you finish, right? So it's gonna be a loop, and that's called pagination, right? Just paginate until it finishes. In this case, what I'm putting here is the size of that page, how many items I want per page. In this case, it's 100, right? So that goes with the API. Each API has a limit. In this case, it's 100, but you can change that if you want. Okay, so with that we have the config. Now we need to go. And let's start with this function make Java invoices. So as I mentioned, this is the orchestrator where it will do everything, right? So the main is this one here. This one here, right? And as I mentioned in the beginning, this API is pretty straightforward. That's why we don't need to do many things like Google Ads or Meta Ads or something like that, right? So here we do three simple things, right? So we get the access token, we make a call to the API and fetch whatever we need, and then we write that to the spreadsheet, like that. So let's start with the first one. Get access token via refresh Java, which is this part here. We need to do these 3 functions. Let's start with this one. Okay, so this is the function for that. And as you can see, get access token via refresh URL, right? So, as always, I'm putting some comments here so to see what the function is doing, and also some steps within the function just to guide ourselves. So the first step is that we are only building the payload, right? So we're sending the client ID, client secret, the grant type is gonna be refresh token, meaning we're gonna use the refresh token to get the access token, and then we pass in the refresh token, right? And then here, this is the endpoint that we're gonna use. This one here that we have in config. I just put it in config in case they change it. I don't think they will change it, but you never know. So in case they change it, you just add this part here and it doesn't break. And then here, this is just a guard, just to make sure something comes. If there's an error, it will just show you the error and I won't break. And then once we have that data, once we have the token, right, you just parse that as a JSON and we get the key access token, right? And then we just return that. That's pretty much what this function is doing. So let's go with this main function, the fetching part. And here in fetching, this one is going to be longer, but it's the one that is doing everything. Okay, so this is the function to get the invoices. And something important to keep in mind here is that this is GraphQL API, right? It's not a REST API, it's a GraphQL API. So as you can see, I'm sending a query and I'm not making a call to an endpoint, right? It's not like returning a JSON. So you need to keep that in mind in case you're adding more things, like if you want to bring more things to a spreadsheet. You will see in the documentation, right? But just keeping in mind that you need to send queries and not make calls to endpoints, right? Because it's a GraphQL API. So basically, once you have it, right? So we are first preparing like a variable that is going to aggregate all the information, and then a cursor. So the way it works with GraphQL, is that like you're sending, again, like as I mentioned, we're doing pagination, but we need a cursor so the API knows what was the last item that we retrieved, and from that item we need to get the rest, right? So if we set it up to be 100, right? So the first page is gonna get from 0 to 99, and then in that case the cursor in the first call is gonna be 99. So in the second page it will start from 99 and get another 100, and so on and so forth, right? So the cursor is for that. But that's pretty much here. You can see that I'm doing this looping until it finishes, and we are getting the cursor, right? So we're updating the cursor in every loop. So here we're building the query what we need to send. In this case, I want to get this data here: ID, the invoice number, subject, and these details. Here we're building the request. It's a post request. You can see passing the access token that we're getting. So this access token is coming in the argument, right? And as you can see here on the orchestrator, we're using the first function here to get the access token, right? So we get this fresh access token, and once we have it, we pass it here in the arguments, and then we make a call to get the invoices, right? That's pretty much the logic that I explained here. And then with this data that we got, we pass it as an argument as well, and then we write to the sheet. And then here, again, this is just for like, we're guarding, right? We have a guard that just makes sure that if something breaks, just throws an error but doesn't break. Then we get the data, right? We parse it as a JSON. And then here, we're kind of making like a mapping, right? So we're extracting everything from the response, and then we're building our variable here. And then once we have it, we return, right? So every loop, we get the data, we extract the data, we send it to this aggregator, and then we make the next call, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so once we have this data, the only thing that was missing is sending that data to a spreadsheet, right? That's the last function. Okay, so this is the last function, write invoices to the sheet, right? And here we're receiving these nodes, the aggregator, right? So if we go back to a main function, you see, we got the data, and then once we have that data, we pass it here to write invoices, just like that, right? And then here I added these because the data is coming backwards. So what I'm doing here is like sorting by invoice number, so it's gonna be on order, right? But if you don't want it, you can remove that. It's gonna give it like just backwards. Then here we're building the header for the spreadsheet, right? So again, this is the data that I wanted, ID, invoice number. So you can see it here, invoice number for the headers. And here I'm doing the mapping, right? So basically I'm just getting the data from the nodes and just building like in a table style so we can write it. And then here, this is for cleaning in case there was something in the spreadsheet already. We clean it if the spreadsheet is new. In this case, I don't have anything, so this will happen here. If there is no sheet with that name, invoices, this part will create it. If there is a sheet with that name already, it's gonna clean it and then write. That's the logic for this part. Then this is just a guard in case no data, the nodes didn't return data, just returns the function, right? Doesn't write anything. And then here, right, we're writing the data, and then we're formatting, right? In this case, this format is for the dates and for the numbers because the data was coming kind of weird, so I just added this formatting. But you can change this if you're in a different country that uses a different format that is year, month, and day. You can change it here. And that's it, guys. So now let's save this and test it and see if it actually works. Okay, so we save, and then the function that we need to run is main your invoices, right? The orchestrator. So we click it there. The first time that you run it, it's gonna ask you for permission. So you can add permission. This is just the first time that you do it, right? And let's see the spreadsheet. And voila, you can see here that it created the sheet. You can see, right? Created the invoices sheet. And then here we have the invoices, right? Okay, so let's do a quick check to compare that the data is similar. So let's go to the report. And here we wanted to pull invoices, right? So you can see that I have client 1, client 2, then we have the dates, right? So this is the dates, due date that I created. This is just an example. And then subject, right? The status, paid, and then we have here the totals, right? 10 and 20. That's it, guys. That's how this API works. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. I will reply to them as soon as I see them. All right. Thanks.